Welcome to the September 2022 version of the Libraries Connecting Texas webinar. We're happy to see you all here, and we do have a question and answer option in the controls. If you see that, we also have chat open, and we're monitoring that for questions. Please speak up if you have questions. Or if there's something that you want to share. We have Patty, Kyle, Jennifer, Kennedy, Cheryl, Jenny, and I'm Caroline. Thank you for all being here, and we'll get started. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the fun stats about Libraries Connecting Texas for 2022. Kyle's going to talk about the Form 470. Yes, it's time for the Form 470 again. Not all of you will have to file one this year, but it's always a good thing to review. Patty's going to talk about Category 2 budgets, and Kennedy's going to talk about document retention and give you a few reminders about things that you need to do. So just a few little interesting tidbits. Libraries that are a part of the Libraries Connecting Texas project were funded a total of $1.2 million in Category 1 services for 2022. I should have put that in there. This is a program that's been going on since 2018. And just to let you know, the average bandwidth for LCT libraries this year was 742 megabits per second compared to 2018, which was 57. That's how it's kind of the average of where everybody was when this program started. So that's an average increase of 1,302%. That's a kind of a big number for a percentage, but that just means that all of you have been great about upgrading your bandwidth and moving forward. That was one of the big parts of the Libraries Connecting Texas project to begin with. The state library wanted everyone to increase bandwidth. Libraries, just to give a little bit of the background, libraries that were serving fewer than 50,000 people, the target was, I think, 500 megs, and the target for libraries servicing 50,000 or more, it was a gig. And so that's above the average. The average is above what was the target. So that means this program must be a success. But 3 libraries have service providers who have not filed an annual certification for 2021. That's for last year. We're coming up on the deadline to invoice for 2021 for Category 1 services or other recurring charges. So it's really important that libraries who have service providers who haven't filed their annual certification, check on that. That's Johnson City, Rube Sessions, and Commerce. Those 3 libraries have service providers that have not filed their SPAC, which is the Service Provider Annual Certification Form. 33 funding requests for 2021 have no invoice mode set. So that means that invoices have not been filed for them, and we'll be sending out reminders. We're getting ready to start October, and the deadline is at the end of October. So we always encourage you to look at your bills and check with us if you don't know if you've received your discounts or if you're expecting your service provider to be invoicing for your services, but you're maybe not seeing that on your bill. You'll probably need to file a BEAR if that's the case. But there are libraries who have been receiving the benefit of their discounts this year. $470,243.26 has been dispersed to LCT libraries for 2021. So looking forward to seeing the rest of those funding requests get funding dispersed to them. Now we're going to go to Kyle for the 470 prep. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Caroline. So as Caroline mentioned, now is a great time to start filing your funding year 2023 Form 470. Later in this presentation, I'll also be discussing the competitive bidding portion of that. But for now, let's just talk about first steps for filing the Form 470. So in preparing for that, if we can just head to the next slide. Preparing for that, please consider your future technology and needs, and prepare a needs assessment for the next E-rate year. That is starting on July 1st of 2023. So if you are planning on increasing your bandwidth or starting a new contract in that funding year between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th of 2024, be ready to file a Form 470 in the next couple of months here. If you have a contract, a multi-year contract that extends past June 30th, 2024, you will not need to file a Form 470. You should not need to, but if you're considering an increase in bandwidth or something like that, you may still need to file a Form 470. So please let us know if that is something you're considering. So the services requested are on the Form 470. We can go to the next slide. We're good. So the Form 470 is a document that is going to describe all these services you are requesting for the library. LCT specifically helps libraries in filing for Category 1 services. That includes internet access and data transmission. So that is service that goes to the library. It can be accompanied and should be accompanied with a request for proposal. If you do not have a local requirement for request for proposals, you can use one of our service specifications templates, which includes information about the library's current level of service and the library's requested level of service. And there's some useful language in there as well regarding what is being requested specifically. So you have a number of options to consider with that. The Form 470 is generally available 1 year before the start of the funding year. So funding year 2023's 470 was available in EPC as of July 1st, 2022. So you could potentially file a Form 470 today if you wanted to and you were ready to do so. Services provided on a month-to-month basis do require a new Form 470 each year, and the same goes for 12-month contracts or less. If you have a multi-year contract, it's useful because it allows you to go multiple years without having to file a new Form 470, but that doesn't always work for every library as well. And again, any contract that ends before June 30th, 2024, you should file a new Form 470. So this is a brief overview of some of the services you can request on the Form 470. Now, this is considering the different types of connectivity that you can get at the library, the service. You can get leaflet fiber, you can get a wireless or satellite internet connection, different types of cable connection, DSL, cable modem. Now, these all are generally going to fall under a particular drop-down in the Form 470. That is, I seek bids for internet access and or data transmission. Beneath that drop-down even, there's a option to seek bids for internet access and transmission service. And then below that, I seek bids for internet access and data transmission services, whether offered by one service provider as a bundled package or offered by one or more service providers as independent services. Now, that bottom option there, that covers a lot of possibilities, and generally on the Form 470, that is a good option to select, especially if you're in and you should select it even if you are seeking something like dark fiber or a special construction for a self-provision network. You should always consider on the Form 478 the possibility of a least lit connection. And again, the internet and transport bundled or independently offered services is the most common option to consider in that. But consider what your current services are like: fiber, cable, what have you. And here's a good visualization of what that 470 looks like. We are also in the process of creating a recorded video in which we walk through the process of filing the Form 470. Once that is available, we can make that link available to you folks. But this is one page that you will see in the Form 470 about adding new service requests to that Form 470. And we have boxed in red the specific drop-downs that are most likely relevant to your library and should likely be selected. I seek bids for internet access and or data transmission service. And again, this is just a repetition of what we discussed on the previous slide, but this is a great visualization of what you are going to see in terms of those drop-downs. The other options are more niche, more specific use cases that you may want to consider, but likely do not apply to your library at this time. So the funding year 2023 470 goal, and this is a goal that you should have, and that we certainly have in helping the LCT libraries all file Form 470s by Thanksgiving. Every library that needs to file a Form 470 should plan on filing that before Thanksgiving, because there is a 28-day minimum timeline after filing the Form 470 that allows for bids to be submitted in response to that Form 470. There's a bit of a lead time before the bids can be evaluated, and before those evaluated bids can be segued into a contract or agreement that can be reflected on the Form 471. And that window opens in January, typically. In the past couple of years, it has. So by filing the Form 470 by Thanksgiving, you're ahead of the ball and you're ahead of the curve, and you can not be stressed about the process when we get closer to that Form 471 window. So in light of competitive bidding, let's discuss that a little bit. So for competitive bidding, the Form 470 must be posted for all interested service providers to respond for a minimum of 28 days, as I mentioned just a minute ago, in terms of that timeline there. Once the Form 470 is certified, the only editable fields are changing the application name, the main contact or technical contact information, and making minor non-substantive changes to an RFP. So that RFP is, again, that attachment that includes information about the services that you are seeking. If you do make changes like that, then it can extend the timeline again, or you may have to refile a Form 470. So it's best to file early and address any of those changes as quickly as possible, so that you're all good to go by the 471 window. So funding year 2023 470s will need an RFP, and that's defined as any additional bidding document that provides more details than the Form 470. Again, we can provide you with a service specifications document, a template that includes information about the library as it is currently, the address, the current level of service, the desired level of service, as well as who can receive the questions about the service and who can receive the bids about the service. And typically that will be you as the contact for the library. Additionally, on that template, we include a timeline that extends the past the 28 days a little bit and creates a period in which service providers can submit questions, and you can provide clarifying answers at the end of that Q&A period. This can help libraries receive a more complete and more accurate proposal from that vendor, that service provider, and hopefully result in a better deal for the library in the long run. The RFP must be uploaded as part of the Form 470. If you do not upload the RFP when you certify the Form 470, you won't be able to add one later. By adding that RFP, you can later go in and make updates, like adding a Q&A document that includes the questions you received and the answers that you can present to those questions. And by uploading it to the Form 470, it's fair and open and accessible to all service providers that are looking at that Form 470. So that brings us to some program compliance do's and don'ts. Again, the competitive bidding process should be fair and open, so all bidders must be treated the same. And all bidders must have enough details to know what is required of them. And that's part of why that service specifications document is very useful. It provides that additional detail. You can potentially include a period on that service specifications document or RFP that allows for walkthroughs at the site that is going to be receiving the services, and that could potentially allow for that additional detail as well. When you are doing your final evaluation, the price of eligible goods and services must be the most heavily weighted criteria. This is an important rule to follow, and at least the most heavily weighted criteria. Some don'ts to consider. Don't provide bidders with advanced knowledge of the project, and don't share information with one bidder that you would not with others. Again, it's a fair and open process, and by submitting all the answers and same information to all prospective bidders, that's going to help you avoid compliance issues with that. And also, don't have the point value of other criteria be weighted the same as the eligible cost. The price of eligible services and goods must be the most heavily weighted. So if you were going to do 50-50, you should at least make it 51% weighted towards the price of eligible services, at least making sure it's the most heavily weighted, even if it's not a complete majority at 51%. If you have three criteria, you can do 40% for price of eligible services, and then 30% for two other criteria. And then that is going to bring us to a couple other matters on program compliance. Applicants must avoid conflicts of interest in the bidding process. For example, a conflict of interest exists when an applicant's board member is associated with a service provider that is selected and is involved in determining the services sought by the applicant and the selection of the applicant service provider. So if the bidding process and the ultimate winner of the bid, that evaluation is going to be performed by a library board or your city board. If there is someone on that board who is associated with a service provider, there could be a potential source of conflict of interest there. So please be mindful of this as you are doing your evaluations of proposals received, just to avoid a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. The value of any free services that the library is receiving as part of this generally must be deducted from the pre-discount cost of funding requests. So this also ties in with the gift rules. Gifts are defined as gratuities, favors, entertainment, loans, or any other thing of value. Applicants and your library should not be receiving gifts from service providers and potential service providers. If you have any concerns about either of these free services or gift matters, any specific questions on that, please reach out to us and we can help discuss how you might be able to remedy that or what action you can do to prevent that from happening.
So if somebody wants to give you a boat and they're from a service provider, say no, that actually did happen. So FYI.
Full boat, my gosh.
Okay. So Patty, you're up next to talk about Category 2 budgets. Thanks, Kyle.
Great, thank you. We'll start on the next slide with the Category 2 overview. And the E-rate program classifies services either as Category 1 or Category 2. The Category 1 services will be services such as your internet access that brings broadband into your buildings, or if you have multiple buildings, the service that connects your buildings to one another. Category 2 is connects the devices inside your building. They're called internal connections. In general, Category 2 is equipment such as, not yet, is equipment such as switches, routers, or wireless access points that facilitate that use of the broadband service. So on the next slide, we'll note here that there are some items that are not eligible for E-rate. Some examples of that are computers and servers or any other end-user device will not be eligible for E-rate. Also, any software and hardware for cybersecurity is also not eligible for E-rate. So now that we've gone over what Category 2 is and is not, if this is something of interest to your library, you'll want to start planning for that now. Most of our libraries file for just internet access, but some file for some small Category 2 applications. Our recommendation is to prepare now so that you can begin your procurements before Thanksgiving. For Category 2, there is a budget limitation in the amount that can be funded. So this budget is based on square footage, and it's for a 5-year budget cycle. So the cycle that we're in now started in funding year 2021, and it goes through funding year 2025. So to calculate your library's budget, you'll multiply $4.50 per square foot, and this will calculate your pre-discount budget. An exception to this is for any library locations that have less than 556 square feet, then you'll get a budget floor of $25,000 for that location. So we have an example here. If you have a library system that consists of a bookmobile, a library branch with 4,000 square feet, and a library branch with 7,500 square feet, the way you would calculate that Category 2 budget would be $25,000 for the bookmobile, $25,000 for the smaller library branch, and $33,750 for the larger library branch. So in total for the library system, The Category 2 budget is $83,750. On our next slide, we've included here a web address that you can use to check your library's available Category 2 budget. So the website has a place to filter for your library's bin. And once you enter that, it will show your total budget, less any budget that's already been used, and will bring the total Category 2 budget that you have available. So this concludes our Category 2 section, and now I'll hand it over to Kennedy.
One more thing. I definitely suggest that you go to the open data and look and see what is in there for your Category 2 budget if you're planning on doing a project, and make sure that the information in there is correctly calculating what you have as your square footage for your Category 2 budget, because that will have an effect on the size of the project that you can do. Thanks, Patty. Kennedy?
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk with you guys about document retention. So USAC overall, there's a document retention minimum of 10 years. So that's based on 10 years of the last date to receive service. And because that last date is typically, well, is always after the start of the procurement and application cycles, those documents actually need to be retained for around 12 years or potentially even longer. So as a rule of thumb, we just recommend that you do not discard any E-rate materials. If it pertains to your E-rate funding, keep it filed away and make sure that you have it. We want you to keep those so that you can prevent and better prepare for funding reductions or denials, adjusted service start dates, invoice rejections, audit findings, or potential COMATs. So these are some of the documents that you should keep, but I would just like to note that if you are in doubt, just hold on to it. We do definitely need you to hold on to your discount rate calculations, your SEPA compliance documentation, all of your program forms, that's your 470 or 471, all of your RFPs, all of your records related to winning and losing bids. So that's your evaluations, the bids themselves, and any contracts or award dates related to those bids, all of your invoices, and your asset inventory if you are utilizing your Category 2 funding. We do have a comprehensive document retention checklist that will help you kind of keep track of all of these documents and to help you remain in compliance. We will be sending that out, a link out to that shared folder, the Libraries Connecting Texas folder, so that you can access that after the webinar. And then we have a few reminders. So for the funding year 2022 486s, that certify your SEPA compliance and the start of services, there are 26 libraries that have outstanding 486s. So if you happen to be one of those or think that you are one of those, if you're having trouble, if you're not sure what you need to do, please reach out to us so that we can help you get that taken care of. You should have been receiving some outreach from us previously, letting you know that that deadline was approaching. But if you have any questions or you need any assistance with that, please just let us know so that we can get you taken care of prior to that deadline. In addition to that, the funding year 2021 BEAR deadline is approaching on October 28th, and we have 22 libraries who have outstanding invoicing deadlines that they have not yet met. So again, if you think you're one of those 22, please let us know. If you think that you're going to go past that, we suggest filing for a 120-day invoicing deadline extension, but that deadline is October 28th. And if you have not yet received if you filed your BEAR and haven't received your funding, or you haven't yet filed your BEAR, let us help you get that taken care of as well. And then as usual, if you have any questions, reach out to us via email or by phone. We have our whole team gets your phone calls and your emails, so someone is always here to help. Our next webinar will be on October 27th at 2 p.m. And of course, we have all of our resources that we've talked about today. And if you need anything else or other resources that you need, give us a shout and we are glad to help provide those.
Thank you, Kennedy. Is there anyone who has a question or maybe wants to know something about what we've talked about today? I haven't seen any questions in the chat, so I do see that there are lots of people who have been in this program for a while, so you may already know all of the things that we've said. We just have to say them every year to make sure that you know. A few little things. You've heard us talk about RFPs. I know that because you work in a public library, you've probably heard that term before, and it sounds like a scary term. But I just want to make sure that you understand that in the E-rate program, any document that's uploaded into the Form 470 is called an RFP, even if it isn't a competitive bid that requires sealed responses or anything like that. It's just a service specifications document unless you're required to do a sealed bid process. Most of you are smaller libraries and are not required to do that. But if you have any questions about maybe whether you need to file a Form 470, just give us a call or shoot us an email. I do want to make sure that you also are aware of the two deadlines. October 28th is the invoice deadline for recurring services for 2021. Don't miss that deadline. You only get one extension, and that's it. So if you aren't sure if you've been receiving your discounts, or if you need help with the bear, give us a call. We have templates that you can use to calculate your bear information. If your service provider hasn't applied discounts to your bill yet, you will probably need to file a bear, and you need to make sure you have a Form 498 on file before you do that. So it's really important for you to act now. So Elsie, it says you said that you've gotten another notification about the Form 486. Okay, so you need to make sure that when you submitted the Form 486 that you did check the correct box on the 486. If you've received a notification, that usually means that USAC's reaching out to you because they have questions. We'll take this question offline. Kyle may know the answer. But the certifications on the Form 486 can sometimes be confusing. You sometimes, and people maybe accidentally check the wrong box. One of the reasons for the Form 486 is to certify that you're compliant with the Children's Internet Protection Act. In E-rate, when you first start applying for discounts, you have a year to become compliant with SIPA, and after that, they're expecting you to be compliant. Compliance means that you have an internet safety policy on file and you're actively filtering images that might be harmful to children. That definition of images that may be harmful to children is a case-by-case basis. That means your library determines what gets filtered and what doesn't get filtered, and that's based on your community. So if you have all of those things, then you're probably compliant. You need to make sure that you've discussed your policy at a board meeting or another public meeting. Have all those documents, together. So if you've done all of that, then you can certify that you're compliant. And if you check the box that says that you're becoming compliant and it's after the first year, you're going to get that outreach. So just want to make sure you understand the certifications. If you have any questions while you're certifying your Form 486, please ask us. We're happy to help you make sure that you check the right box. Any other questions? Okay, well, we thank you for participating in today's webinar, and we hope you have a great rest of the month, and we'll see you in October. Thanks, y'all. Bye.